ranting and raving. So
And yeah, we're back. This is the part two of Morning Joe's part one. We had some technical difficulties. I think
it's now afternoon Joe's.
I think the the internet gave up on the Vikings just as much as we did. As Joe was saying, I don't know. I mean, looking at the game, there's obviously a lot to talk about. I don't know. I have in the agenda. I have a point that just says silver linings question mark, and
Oh God, I laughed.
I was gonna update that, and then I didn't know what to put there. I mean, obviously Adam Thielen is amazing, right? He is just he's so good, and it makes me. I'm always the type of guy that looks back at situations, and like when the Vikings are 6-1, but they lost a game by 3 points, and then they go 7-1, and I'm always thinking, man, that one. That's just how my brain works. When I see Thielen out there doing the double move and the catch at the end of the end zone and all that stuff, I think, man, wouldn't it be nice if Diggs was still here? Um,
Yes.
and that's never gonna until Diggs flames out of the league. Maybe that's not going to change. I guess he had a great day, or 86 yards, but not that best, but a good day. I think he caught every single target. 8 targets were thrown his way.
Nice.
Um, but when it comes to the other wide receivers, I want your take on. Here's in full disclosure, I have never been a fan of the Justin Jefferson pick, and I don't think I was alone at the time. We did a live draft um, sort of video thing back during the draft with Kirby and Deshaun, who are very into the draft and prospecting. And I looked around at all of the reactions that people had, both locally and nationally, and a lot of them said that the Justin Jefferson pick was a reach. Now I know I'm going to get people saying to me what they said. When I responded to the fact that Justin Jefferson was apparently not doing as great against second team Vikings corners in camp as people expected because A, he's a first round draft pick, B, he had monster stats last year, and C, he supposedly knew Kubiak's system because it's the same system LSU ran. And everyone's saying it's training camp, dude, pump the brakes. But it's like, okay, now that you've seen what our corners can or I guess can't do against Green Bay, it's obvious why he didn't do well because he ran free off the line in college. And my thing is, if you're going to use a first round draft pick on a wide receiver, we've seen it time and time again with other teams. Michael Thomas, Odell Beckham Jr. You can find a guy who on day one is supposed to contribute. I don't understand this whole, well, let's keep him behind BC Johnson and maybe he'll run out of the slot here and we'll slowly develop him. When we have that gigantic hole where Diggs was and we fill it with a guy with the pick we got for it that everybody at the time of the draft said was a reach because he's a one-dimensional guy that you could have gotten in a similar production type guy later because it was a very, very deep wide receiver draft. Everyone said that at the time. Then they kind of flipped and were trying to do the whole, well, let's be positive about it because if we don't, we'll get ripped by fans and we don't want our website to be labeled that way. I just don't get why you spend a first round draft pick on a guy like this or Laquan Treadwell and then you have that need and then they never start the guy and let him see what he can do. Why is he behind BC Johnson and getting little dump off screens? Like, couldn't we have drafted Denzel Mims, a guy who can stretch the field, or even go after the Butler guy that I want? I just don't get this tentative approach to a skill player that you clearly need at the biggest position of need on your offense, besides the offensive line.
Do you know that Zimmer has never been one to start rookies? I mean, unless he had to, or unless they're over and above, skill set uh, that warrants it. So you got that coming in. You have BC Johnson, who's a decent route runner, who has a year in the system, who'd gotten better as the year went along. You have some security in him. You're going up against your main rival in the NFC North, a team that finished ahead of you last year, beat you twice. You probably want more experience, and it's Jefferson's first game. He didn't get any preseason. He didn't really get, he's not ready. Yeah, so I wouldn't have. I like the move. Get BC Johnson in there who knows what he's doing. Is going to make less mistakes in a game it's going to be huge to how you finish this season. I mean, this was a really, really big game for the Vikings. Unfortunately, they had nothing beforehand coming in to get these guys ready. Now, if you want to go back to the draft, and say they picked the wrong guy, that's fine. I'm talking about, your point as far as not starting him and putting him out there and getting him in there and
Yeah,
I think you have to, uh, from what you've seen whether he's ready or not, and so then you make your decisions along those lines. I think at some point a rookie's also got to earn his stripes to get that playing time. And it was nice to see him when he got in there. He's got some juice. There's no two ways
I
about it.
liked the
But
second. Yeah, the second catch he had, that little movie put on. Me and my dad were both like, "Ooh." But to me, it's like, okay, you pick this guy in the first round, and you're in a situation in which you're basically having to air it out, right, to catch up to the Packers, and he gets two catches. And
yeah.
after the game, most people were saying, well, from what we saw, he's just going to run out of the slot all season, and you know me, Joe. I spend way too much time on the internet. I spend way too much time arguing with people in my mind because I don't want to be the guy on Bleacher
Hmm.
Report or something that's yelling at people who are supporting the site, right? So I don't ever really engage in comments. I just rant to myself, in the
and
mirror.
and on morning shows and on
But
morning shows. Yeah.
yeah, it's a this is you should bill me for your therapy. Um, I'm just going for all these people that are saying, well, you're wrong. He's a monster. He's going to put up monster stats. He was worth the pick. He can play on the outside. They just move him to the inside. He's not going to press coverage. And it just feels like, yeah, if he was that superstar that everyone said he was, he would have had more than two catches in a game. Even in garbage time where we're trying to air the ball out, it's like, where was he? I don't know if Zimmer even has control over what the offense does in that regard, but I find it a little disconcerting. If you're right, he has to earn his stripes, but he didn't earn them in training camp. I don't get it, because I
I don't
honestly
think so.
I like BC Johnson. I think people state his value because we're used to Treadwell and a bunch of failed other third receiver options, and he
Good
actually made
point.
some catches last year. And then okay, he can pick up a first down here and there. But I think he's a possession guy. I don't think he's anything special. And so it was a little irritating that we didn't see more of him considering. But then again, that's issue 7F on the list of things that
and
went
and I
wrong.
would say, that's why we didn't see much of Thielen in the first half. He had two catches on the first series when they went down the field, and then he went dark. He went silent for much of the rest, like the offense in the first half. It wasn't until garbage time when maybe he started getting open because they were trying to
They
keep it in
weren't
front of.
trying. Yeah.
There could be, but with all people are talking to how great his day was. Well, good on you.
Yeah.
If it doesn't contribute to a win, I don't care if it's garbage time where they're trying to burn the clock and keep things in front of them. It doesn't do that much for me. I was certainly pleased with my fantasy team. But that's beside the point. Anyway,
Best bench in
I
the
think
league.
I think that BC Johnson deserves to be there because I don't know. Do we know how much different Jefferson is than him so far? If they're both playing in the slot area, or maybe they should have tried Jefferson on the outside. I will agree with you. I would have liked to seen him run once and see what you could get in that regard. But
Yeah.
maybe he's not. Doesn't know the system good enough yet, or doesn't run
They
good
just
enough
came
routes.
out a week ago and they were like, he's so smart, he knows the system, so we're going to use him everywhere. It was like a Percy Harvin
Right?
situation. And then you get
Don't you
two
think that
slot passes? What?
that's kind of what I asked Wabi last week? Is some of that just camp talk? I mean, we're there. Zimmer is old school, but smoke screen guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't. We know what happened with Danielle Hunter, so I mean, they're going to say stuff and try to misdirect people and then do something different
Do you chalk
because
it up to that? Because I
I don't
this
know.
this camp more than any, and maybe it's because I wasn't. I mean, and granted, I'm not there that much anyway, and I'm not adept at seeing what's going on the field versus what they're saying. It just seems to me like a lot of the time it's guys running around in shorts. You know what I mean? It's like, how am I going to make a story out of that? But this offseason to me just felt very that way. Like I can't trust a word coming out of their mouth because it just seems like a lot of that stuff. Cameron Dantzler, I know we already covered this, but if people are only hearing part two of this and not part one, um, everyone was calling him the next Deion Sanders. He had this Mr. Mankato type camp outside of maybe KJ Osborne, and he was seven passes thrown his way, seven completions. And Joe talked about.
against a top five receiver in the league, primarily
Yeah,
too.
that. But why was our nickel corner covering him then? I guess. I don't know. I have questions everywhere.
Fundamentals.
I have
Yeah.
questions everywhere. I think the game plan was garbage. I think both. I think Kubiak had a bad game too. We talked about that, but again, if you didn't hear part one, we think he might be rusty, or which is aggravating. The safety that why you didn't identify that and maybe audible out of it. Why you have the point we didn't get to in part one really is we've seen it so many times that if this season is this way again, I'm gonna have a stroke. Cousins is not good at that. Like he needs to, especially in that instance when Cousins is running. The best plays in the game Cousins had were the ones that he created himself, right? And they
Hmm.
encouraged that in camp, I guess, this year. But you got to have him roll out more. You got to have him
Yes.
because it. I think it turns off that part of his brain that gets too excited because he's maybe focusing on running or he's just acting and not thinking. But
He should
I
have
didn't see
rolled
a whole
out
lot of
on
that
that
either.
too.
Um,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I want to see him on the move. I want to see him. Oh God, I'm so tired of this cliche already. Make
I
some
know.
plays off schedule, but that's what they need. And uh, the other part is, I mean, if you were to look at body language between the two quarterbacks and just how Cousins set up in the safety is how Aaron Rodgers set up the entire time. My
Yeah.
goodness, you've got to have a pass rush on that guy because he will get nervous too if he knows he's getting hit. We talked about last week when he found out that what's his face Hunter wasn't playing. He's just giddy,
Yeah.
inside. And he knew what it meant, and he sat that back there and relaxed as heck. They got down 7-3 right out of the gate, and it didn't matter a lick. We know what we're going to do. We're going to go out there and get it. So I would love to see uh, Cousins get to that point. The offensive line had a decent day. I'm sure the numbers wise they were good, but like I said, in the second half they weren't even probably getting rushed as hard, and they didn't open all that many holes for the running game. I mean, it was
No.
it was okay. They had 134 yards rushing, I think, and 130 of them were Cousins from scrambles, but so nothing great, no
I
gangbusters,
think
but
yeah, they had like 99 between. I think Madison had 50 and Cook had 49.
yeah,
But again, garbage time stuff too. I mean, just big
exactly.
runs, and you can't really. I don't know what to learn from that, but I also, not to get well. If people didn't hear I don't want to get repetitive for your sake, Joe. But I mean, that I guess this we're gonna honestly, it's hard to put an agenda for an hour together after a game like this because it's just all bad, but it's all just the core issues
I
that we've been talking about for a
did have
very long time.
I did
Um,
have one part of the agenda that I thought was made me laugh because it was totally Joe Johnson. Was it says "time to panic?" question mark. My
I don't even want to
or
put
the
it.
other one, Zimmer on the hot seat if this continues. Is that Joe Johnson or
Or
what?
what?
But
Or I'm surprised that it doesn't say Big Ten better than SEC exclamation point.
I did want to. Did you notice they had a shot of Zimmer on the sidelines when he was calling plays and he had a menu card in his hand and he was shaking and
I
his
saw
hand
that
was
too. I know exactly what you're talking about.
and,
I thought
and
that too.
they didn't say anything really on the air about it or they didn't go back, but it looked like tremors, and I don't know
Yeah,
if it was nerves or I mean as you get older sometimes if I'm using my hands quite a bit, working on something,
yeah,
after a while you do something delicate, they shake a little bit. I get that,
yeah.
but that was kind of overt. That was intense.
I was gonna ask you. That's funny you bring that up because I know exactly what the shot you're talking about. And because what drew me to even paying attention to that was the fact that he was wearing a mask, but he was still covering his mouth, which I thought was funny.
I saw
Which
that elsewhere in the league on this weekend. Another guy that was doing that, I think, for the Rams defense.
it's just like, old habits die hard. But
Yes.
I noticed that too, and I wasn't sure if that was something that he had that I just hadn't noticed before. Like my dad has one of those
Yeah.
benign tremors they call it. But in regards to Zimmer, I mean, I'm sure he was also shaking with rage. In
Yeah.
regards to what was going on, but you're right. I mean, in regards to Rodgers, he there with no you. How can you allow him to just sit back there and pick you apart like that without the run? What happened to Zimmer being a double A gap blitz guy. Did we, that was like,
Personnel.
yeah. I mean, so obviously, I think that just the way Zimmer's system works, and the fact that Daniil Hunter was out and Ngakwe was neither in game shape nor super familiar with what we do here, no semblance of any pressure from the inside of the defensive line, which is going to be a season-long
Hmm.
issue. And then you have all these corners who are either inexperienced. Well, they're all inexperienced. I honestly think that they just were like, "This is all we can do, and we're gonna
Yeah.
let's just limit the big plays and let them, hopefully, not convert as much on the dink and dunk stuff. We'll get lucky, and then the offense might be able to do something." I've always kind of thought this offseason that the only chance we have again is Kubiak elevating this offense to an elite level to score points. And a lot of people are saying, well, they scored 34, but how many of those points are real points? Again, as we keep saying,
Yeah.
they were garbage time points. Um, so it is hard to kind of get a sense of where the offense is at, I guess. I mean, I don't know how you felt about Dalvin's day. I felt like he did the best he could with what was given to him. A little, I get perturbed because I feel like Zimmer has drafted all these corners in the first and second round, and not focused on the offensive line, even though you don't really need a first or second round pick to get these guards, but whatever. And then you develop them in Rhodes and Waynes and Mackenzie Alexander. Now they're gone. Now you get these other guys, first round picks. One of them doesn't even hardly play. One's whatever. On the offense, as Mike Tice said on our show, this is an offensive line built for the run, right? It's not. They want
Hmm.
athletic guys, smaller guys that can get to the second level. They got rid of Josh Klein, who I don't had a really positive impact on the run game on the right side next to Brian O'Neill. I've written about that multiple times this offseason. The numbers that Dalvin Cook had when Klein played 13 games and the 3 games that he missed, where it was a very tangible difference. I mean, every game that he missed, Dalvin averaged 2.5, 2.6 yards a carry. Every other game, he averaged over almost 5. Um, but they got rid of him because he wasn't as good at quote unquote getting to the second level for screens and so on and so forth. And so you sacrifice pass protection for the run game. And if they're not getting that push, I don't. Then what did you do it for?
Yeah.
If the time of possession is seriously 70-30, historically bad, when your whole entire game plan is predicated on slow, methodical runs, slowing down the game, time of possession, field position, and you're not getting that push. Everyone on this offensive line has played, except for maybe Dozier, has played against the Packers. Obviously, they have experience there. We didn't bring anybody new. As our second round pick, the offensive lineman wasn't even dressed for, which is another irritating aspect of this whole thing. But if they're not getting that push on the ground, then it's all for naught because it just seems like there's always conflicting things that the more that you think about it and the more they conflict, the harder it is to understand why they built the team this way and how they're going to get out of it at this point.
Yeah. I called for that we needed 500 rushes for the Vikings last week. But it seemed like it went the other way around. They had, you hear that. I think it was Ngakwe was on the field for 44 of 77 snaps. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
how many plays they had. Now
Yeah,
I
that's
think
yeah.
to quote a cliche, that game went pear shaped early, and they like you said they says let's try to make limit it even worse, limit big plays and just try to get out of here and you know it it's got some issues. Their personnel has to get up to speed a lot quicker. Yeah, there's no room on the schedule for them to do that. I have a bet every year with my cousin, and we pick the how the Vikings going to finish. The guy that loses gets to pick. He picked 10-6, and so I originally went 9-7 because then I get the under. And then they traded for Yannick Ngakoue, and I said, well, maybe they'll be all right back there on defense. And so I went for the over. I'm bumming now because I
Yeah.
don't think they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna. Certainly not going to be 11-5, and they have to improve. I don't think. I looked at a couple. I saw one Monday Morning Quarterbacks power rankings this morning before we caught on, and they have the Vikings at 15, and I think that's a little generous because
Me
they
too.
have not shown that yet. That
Nope.
they have to. They have to get a heck of a lot better real quick, and it's I wish we knew the answer to Gladney, or why he's not out there, Gadley, or how do you say his name?
Gladney.
Uh, Gladney, and I want Daniil Hunter back and healthy ASAP, because that's going to make a huge difference. Because
Yeah.
they're going to wear out middle linebacker Eric Kendricks like this, and I saw Harrison Smith running around with like chicken with his head cut off. Those guys are going to be done by midseason if they don't get these guys
I
some
know, and they
help.
just made Kendricks take a pay cut, and he's out there running the like saving the day, or not really, but at least keeping things semi afloat. I mean, there's just
Yeah,
questions everywhere. I mean, where was Irv Smith Jr.? Everyone's talking about this amazing breakout season he's going to have. He has no targets. Like,
yeah, him and the tight end position disappeared. I think Rudy had one target too, and that was it.
and
Two passes to tight end.
everyone's talking about, what is the thing everyone says about Kubiak? The two tight end system.
Right. Yep.
It's just very strange. I don't know. I don't understand what happens to people when they come to Minnesota. Why things always go sideways. Why careers are ruined. Why legacies are tarnished. But it always seems to happen. I mean, I kept looking at what Kubiak did to the Ravens from 2014 to 2015, and how he took the same roster that didn't have as much more talent than we do now, and turned them into something special. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know, and I don't know how do you fix it. Going back to the first point that maybe people didn't hear if they're listening to part two of this, people being surprised. The fact that you bring up power rankings, that's the best way for me to explain it, because a lot of power rankings had us at 7 before. I'm like that. Ooh, people are in for a rude awakening. What bothers me is I wrote an article saying if you were surprised by the Packers' outcome, you weren't paying attention. And this guy commented that I have no right to say that, because I'm basically taking credit for things I haven't. He's like, you never predicted that. Show me where you predicted it. And I'm like, do you not read every single thing I write is about how negative I've been about the off season? It's kind of my brand. What I actually quoted you in my response to him, which was something you said last week. Oh, Zimmer is a glorified defensive coordinator, and you're like, I wonder how many times that's been posted out there on the internet by you. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of. Don't take away my if I can take a little bit of credit for being right about this, it's the only pleasure I'm deriving from this situation. So don't take that away from me too.
Yes,
Uh,
that is your brand. That is your brand. It's that's like I said. It's Zimmer on the hot seat if this continues. I mean,
he
my
will be.
goodness. No, he won't. He just signed a god dang new
So
contract,
did
and
Brad Childress,
it's
and
a
he got fired the year after he signed it.
bad Brad Childress. The things became toxic around him, and I don't think that's the case here. They know that personnel is an issue. They're just not saying it. Zimmer's not going to come out there and say,
Thank
"Oh,
you.
we're too young."
Thank you.
They're not
Yeah.
going to say it. They never do. They come and tell you. Well, they'll find that thing that Zimmer actually praised Dantzler. He said, he made this one bad play, but otherwise did pretty good. I saw some good things, which is true. However, I
What
don't think
good
it
things?
encapsulates. I don't think it, because that sometimes he was in position
Okay.
and he was where he was supposed to be. He
He
might
just
not
made the
have made
play.
the play.
The
Yeah,
Marcus
and
Sherrills situation.
there's a damn good quarterback throwing on the other side, who can throw his passes wherever he wants and doesn't panic. So, or he didn't have to this time. Anyway, they're not going to come out and say it, that he never does. He's probably learned his lesson about motivating people
That's
in
very
the
true.
media.
Yeah.
So, and certainly not after the first week when there was no preseason and there was very little offseason. They're going to ride with these guys a little bit, and then when they start finding out, okay, maybe they don't have it, then you'll see some changes. You'll see some, and then you can start calling for Zimmer's head. I think it's a little premature to be concerned about that yet. So.
Oh, and I'm not by any means saying it's right now, but I feel like if this team, I do still think that the Wilfs expect success, and I think that Tom was it Flor no, who's the guy that has the embassy? No, it was Florio, that's supposedly a Vikings fan. He ripped on the extension of Zimmer by saying that the Wolves were happy with regular season success, but really no chance of winning a Super Bowl. I don't think that's a fair shake. I don't think you have
Yeah, because
any evidence to prove that.
that
Uh,
Super Bowl winning quarterback is just sitting out there waiting to be hired. I'm sure he's just
exactly.
sitting right by his phone saying, "Come on, Mark, Ruzicki, give me a call."
And there's
No,
no,
sorry.
I think we know in Minnesota. I don't know. It's being a fan of Minnesota is weird because we're used to heartbreak, but we're also used to a disproportionate amount of success.
Yeah, yes, you're
Um,
right.
and I think
Top
that
top 5 or 6 winning percentage in the whole league. Yeah.
yeah, it's a
So,
weird dichotomy that creates it's basically people like me, and I think that there's an assumption that if they get rid of Zimmer, there will be something better out there that will improve upon what he's built, and at this point, if Kubiak can't figure it out, I don't think anybody can, and I would keep Zimmer around. Like I said last week, there's no difference between Kubiak being the head coach and Zimmer being the defensive coordinator, which would have been my dream to have happen because these are all Zimmer's
hmm
guys. He's drafted them for his system, and he's also done a really good job of developing guys he's drafted on defense. And so there's no difference between that and Kubiak being the offensive coordinator because he's got complete autonomy over the offense basically. And so I do think that the people had an unrealistic expectation for this season, and I get why the team wouldn't come out and say, "Yeah, we're gonna
I'd agree
suck
with
this
that.
year." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think people
Yep.
just thought, well, Xavier Rhodes was awful, so no one can be worse than him, and no one really ever
hmm
liked Trey Waynes for reasons. He wasn't flashy. Maybe he wasn't up to the standards of a first round pick at the cornerback position, especially one under Zimmer, but he was good enough better than leaps and bounds better than what we saw this past weekend. And so we get spoiled and we expect a little that if we get rid of X, it'll automatically be improved upon. And I think
Right.
we're seeing that that isn't always the case from a head coaching perspective. And it's also not the case when you get rid of players like Linval Joseph. I thought that was a nightmare waiting to happen, even before the Michael Pierce thing. But again,
Yeah.
the personnel, you're not going to have Michael Pierce back. I looked it up halfway through the game, hoping that maybe he could opt back in from the COVID opt out. Yeah, I guess he can't. So they don't have anybody there. They tried to get PJ Hall, that didn't work, and now they're having Jaleel Johnson, who's not a nose tackle. He wasn't drafted to play nose tackle. He was drafted to play behind Sharif Floyd. As a 3 tech, he's
hmm
it, you're not going to have good play from the interior defensive line all season unless somehow we find somebody that's a free agent. Some people are talking about that Snacks Harrison guy. I don't know if he's still available. He was a week ago. I would definitely say throw as much money at that guy as you possibly can to get him in here because he's a big, heavy tank that can stuff up the middle of the line. That'll help once Hunter's back, once Ngakwe's healthy. Then you might have something because you'll be able to get enough pressure on the quarterback to help those young guys out, and maybe they'll, get a little bit better. I guess they can't get much worse.
You
Is
know,
my point.
I will say, regarding the Zimmer on the hot seat and all that kind of thing, it does get a little frustrating from time to time to look around the league and see, some other league, team that probably stunk for a while and they or they make changes, they land the hot new coaching item like McVay or like Shanahan or like what's his name over in Green Bay. You kind of
LaFleur.
think, wow, man, yeah, that's what we got to find that next guy, and maybe we just lost him in Kevin Stefanski, which hasn't been proven yet. But the same thing goes for a quarterback. The Vikings with their success in the regular season never get that top draft choice when that great quarterback
Yep.
comes up. And you see Kyler Murray, who's gonna maybe be the next Patrick Mahomes, and you look around the league and say, how come the Vikings can't land on one? Now, granted, all of them are not going to turn into that. Not all these coaches are great. McVay still doesn't. He went to a Super Bowl, but who knows if they're a flash in the pan out there. So it's such a hard thing to judge. I have always liked what Zimmer's done here. I'm probably more old school than you and most of the people that are listening to the show and follow the site, but you do wonder at some point if you got him and another old school coach got in there, if the game's going to pass them by at some point.
Really
So
good
you have
point.
to pay attention to that. So I
That's
don't
a
know, but
that's a really good
go ahead.
point. I feel like we are finally seeing this new era of coaches. My entire life, it feels like, well, Wade Wilson got fired again, but he's going to get hired by somebody else. And, these guys just kept rotating around the league. It was such an insular group of people. I mean, Norv Turner's worked for more teams than Adrian Peterson has. And the league is very they've a lot of followers and they hop on whatever trend is here or there, but it
Hmm.
does feel like there's this new wave of coaches who embrace analytics. For example, Doug Peterson. The Vikings were up until last season one of the two teams that didn't even subscribe to any analytics service to bring them
Yeah,
data, and maybe if you're an old school coach, you feel like, well, I have instincts that this works or that works, but and maybe those instincts are backed up by the data, but why not use it? And I know we are using
right.
it now, but it doesn't seem like Zimmer's gonna be like moneyballing it up, you know what I mean?
No,
So
he's
that's a very
into
good
a
point.
kick against streaming. So yeah, so you wonder. I don't know, and I can't ignore what you say about him. He is a great defensive coordinator, and um, I'm not going to say that he's not a great coach because I like him, but you know what? You have to start looking at it uh, objectively and say, hey, do we need to completely retool at some point? We're not there yet. They got to start out 0-3 before you start saying, because things just get better.
Well,
So
speaking of 0-3, the one comment that was supposed to make me feel better is, well, he's the Hall of Fame. Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's going to destroy our defense. Well, we have another one coming up in Philip Rivers, who is playing for the Indianapolis Colts, a team that I wrote kind of a tongue-in-cheek article about the odds for this game. The Vikings are, I think, 3-point underdogs in that game, which just basically means it's a push because it's in Indianapolis. But the fact that they're underdogs against a team that's basically picked to go 8-8 is disconcerting. But I don't know week to week of what they can do in this game to stop, Philip Rivers, T.Y. Hilton, that sort of thing. I mean, I really, we usually do like a keys to the game situation, but I think you and I will both agree that from a game plan perspective on defense, they're just gonna need to dial up more blitzes, I guess. But Zimmer's never been the type of guy, despite the double A gap blitz name tag, that's been a heavy blitzer. It feels like.
yeah, and you mentioned it earlier. I would have at one point liked to have seen more blitzes from Zimmer last week when they were getting beat, by not doing it. But then again, Rodgers would have picked it up and found the open receiver. For some reason, I just got frustrated, seeing so much protection from him, thinking, how come the Vikings can never figure out get these tackles that can stay on the team for a decade and just
Yeah,
protect a quarterback. It's there is some problem with this regime that is not, A, not prioritizing, and B, not always
it's
hitting
it's
on
it's
all cylinders
it's
with
a
the
completely
line.
different. It's just a point of view. It's a philosophy thing. Wisconsin,
Yeah.
the University of Wisconsin is offensive line U, right? All five of their guys get drafted in the first 4 rounds of the draft. They're known for big, beefy, old school offensive linemen. You know what I'm gonna say? A Big Ten type lineman. That's aside of all the things I say about Big Ten for quarterbacks or players in general. The main thing they're really good at is developing offensive linemen. And our regime doesn't want that. They want smaller guys that are quote unquote more athletic for this run game, but then you pay a quarterback this record amount of money who is bad under pressure. It's just a bad mix. Um, uh,
Yeah, but if they brought in Wisconsin linemen, they would just come in and sabotage the team because it's Minnesota, just like they wanted to sabotage U.S. Bank Stadium with the pillars that
Maybe,
they sent over the
yeah, I
girders.
don't know. Is it the limestone and everyone's getting radon poisoning? I don't know what the problem is, but it's it's starting to drive me crazy. But yeah, I mean, it really comes down to that. Philip Rivers is good, and uh, T.Y. Hilton is also good, and I just don't. I don't have a lot of faith in things being much different. I mean, there's something to be said again that yes, they didn't have a preseason. Yes, they're young, but it was historically bad that game. I should just say that the time of possession thing is historically awful. They haven't measured that in 40 years. It's like the heat wave in California right now. And so I don't know what I really don't know what they're gonna do. I want to see, I guess, more. I just want to see more from the guys. I guess I just want to see more from Justin Jefferson. I just want to see that. I don't know. At this point, I feel like I'm almost in like let's see what we can build on for next season mode, and it's
Right.
week
I was just
two
going to say that. Sounds like you're
ish.
you're you're rebuilding, but I just want to see a win to correct the ship. And thank God, that we've talked so long today and went over our time. We can't talk about the prediction segment because I think we just have to move right on past that. Since
I did it. I
yes,
did
you
it.
did.
I wish I could retire here. I actually did well. I thought for sure I was like I did it again. Joe always goes right for that average score, meet 24-27, and I always go big or whatever. And I think since I won, I go first. I predicted the Vikings would lose 38-31, and they obviously did lose by a very similar gap. I'm gonna pick them to lose again this weekend, unfortunately, because I just don't know how you can right what was wrong there. And I think again, uh, unless Ngakwe can figure things out by himself. Just the defensive line is bad at this point until Daniil Hunter comes back and maybe they can get snacks in there. But I think it'll be something around 38 to 27, something like that.
Wow. Wow.
I know.
Wow. Well, that's good. That'll be another big swing. You do have a 25-point lead right now after the first week because I
Yep.
was 33 off, unfortunately. And I'm going to stay on brand. I'm going to pick the Vikings again because I do believe in Zimmer rebounding and focusing the troops. And I, I I think at some point they're going to get better, and they need to do it now. So I'm going to stay in the middle there, and think the 3 points is not too far off, and pick a 24-23 victory for the purple.
Ooh, it's
So
gonna be a nail biter.
this could be my season where Joe, you finally beat me because you started off well, but keep
That's a
making those
isn't that a sign of
big
the
spreads.
apocalypse?
Could be. We'll see. I'm going to try to fend off the apocalypse as we go through the season, but we'll see. The Vikings are in desperate need. They are. If their season is to be salvaged, it has to have a win this week. I you know I know the seasons are long, and this one's going to be a weird one, but I think that you know um, it could be a tough slog because they've got a difficult schedule, and it's such a strain. They've lost their home field advantage, and it's going to be tough. So they need a win big time on Sunday.
I agree. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but well, we shall see. For those that didn't hear the first part of this show, our season-long sponsor is Manscaped. They're sending us a whole bunch of their products this week, and we'll have a bunch of cool things to talk about in that regard next week. Because I know everyone's looking forward to hearing about Joe Johnson's personal hygiene routine, just knocking down the door.
Yeah, I'm going to be here early next week just to listen to that myself.
Anyway, this has been Morning Joe's for the 15th of September. Thanks for tuning in, and we shall be back next Tuesday.